Hello, everyone, and welcome to the lesson today on phrasal verbs. Thank you very much for joining the class today. I hope everyone is having a very nice Friday afternoon. I hope we can have a fun lesson today before the weekend. I would quickly like to say something about our company while we wait for some more students. So our company is called Cercle, and our goal is to try and help you become more fluent in English in both business and personal purposes. Okay, so the lesson today is on phrasal verbs, and phrasal verbs are normally when we have one verb and we put it with another. For example, a preposition. We had a lesson before on phrasal verbs, and they're quite difficult to understand. There are also many of them, so we'll try and learn some more today and recap the ones that we learned a couple of weeks ago. So hello Ellen, Virginie and Delphine. Thank you very much for joining the lesson today. I hope you're all having a really nice day. And remember, if you have any questions, if it's pronunciation, if it's grammar or vocabulary based, please feel free to ask in the chat and I'm happy to help out. So, because phrasal verbs are used a lot in expressions, different expressions in English, I'm going to start by asking you two questions, which are actually idioms in English. So, I'm going to write them into the chat. Thank you very much, Delphine. First question is, have you ever felt on top of the world? So we'll start very relaxed. We'll start with a couple of easy questions. What does it mean to be on top of the world? So this expression we can use for more personal circumstances. For example, perhaps I should wait to see your answers before I give the definition away. What does it mean to be on top of the world? Surely we're all on top of the world. Does it mean in a really tall tower? Does it mean to be in an aeroplane? What does it mean when someone tells you they feel like they are on top of the world? What does that mean? I'll give you a couple more seconds. Fantastic, Anya. It means to be ecstatic, to be really, really happy. So, yeah, I can see Nana has the correct answer. So, for example, if you have succeeded in getting a job or seeing your friends or family, you can say that you feel on top of the world. It's very, very positive. So hopefully everyone has an experience this weekend where they can feel on top of the world. My next question that I would like to ask you all before we start talking about the phrasal verbs is, have you ever knocked something out the park? So this is an expression that you may hear. What does it mean to knock something out the park? This is related to baseball. When we knock something, we're referring to hitting a ball. When we swing our bat and we hit a ball, we say we knock it. More commonly, we knock on someone's door. Knock is the verb we use to tap on a door to see if someone is inside. You can't knock on a park. So what does this expression mean? What does it mean to knock something out the park? So I'll give you a couple more seconds to think about an answer, and if not, I can explain the same. So it's a very good attempt, Virginie, but unfortunately that is not the definition of the same. If we knock something out the park, just as if we were playing baseball, if I hit the ball really, really hard and the ball goes all the way out the park, It's a really, really good hit. I've done something amazing. That was very difficult to hit the ball so far. So if you ever do something in your work or your business which is very difficult, but you succeed, you could say you knocked it out the park. Let's say, for example, that I had a business meeting. If I was very nervous and it was a very stressful time, if it went very well, I could tell my family or friends that I knocked it out the park. So I hope those two sayings are interesting for you. Thank you very much for contributing and trying to guess. But let's start talking about some phrasal verbs. So what I want to do to start the lesson today is to go straight in and ask you some questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy some sentences in, and you need to fill in the gaps. Okay? So the sentence here is put your shoes blank. It's too cold to walk around barefoot. So these phrasal verbs should be quite simple, but they help to just prepare you for the more difficult expressions later. So when we put something, we normally refer to placing something. Here, we're not placing our shoes anywhere. What word can we put in the blank here? Put your shoes blank. It's too cold to walk around barefoot. Thank you for your suggestion, Virginie. You can say, put your shoes here if you want to direct someone and tell them where you want the shoes to go. Let's say, for example, Virginie, that I have friends coming over and they take off their shoes. I could say, put your shoes here, please. And I would be asking them to place their shoes here, but a really good suggestion. Ania has written here on. So that's the correct answer, Ania, and thank you very much for contributing. We always, or more commonly, use verbs with prepositions, like this example. Put on. When we put on something, it means to wear it. I have put on this shirt for the YouTube live today. Okay, so this sentence, the person's being asked to wear their shoes because it's cold outside. So we could say put on a coat, put on your shoes. Thank you very much, Anya, again. Let's try another example. Okay, so please bear with me. I'm very slow with computers today, so it might take me a couple of seconds to copy the sentence in. But again, I'm going to remove the preposition, and I would like you to write in the correct preposition to complete this phrasal verb. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about some very common examples. We'll talk about more specific ones later, but I want to really start with the easier phrasal verbs, the more common ones. So the sentence is, you must get blank now, or you will be late for school. So we have two answers in the chat. Thank you, Delphine and Alina. We have up and out. These are two correct phrasal verbs. You can say get up and you can say get out, but only one works for this sentence. And as many of you have pointed out, the correct preposition to use here is up. We say get up. And now just quickly, I think some people sometimes get confused between the difference of get up and wake up. When we wake up, it's really when you open your eyes for the first time in the day. When you get up, you're referring to the time when you get out of bed and normally stand on your feet. Okay, so let's talk about some more difficult phrasal verbs. I think we have a good idea of the basic ones. It's always good to recap. what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write down the phrasal verb. And what I would like you to do is tell me what the phrasal verb means. So, number 1 is team up. What does it mean to team up in English? What does this phrasal verb mean? Where could you use it? How can you team up? I'll just give you a couple of seconds to respond. And it's okay to guess and make mistakes. We're here to learn, and I'm happy to help. So, Virginia, that's a really good try, because when we think of teams, we think of équipes. And of course, there are many different teams. I have a football team called Manchester United. That's my team. But here, this is a different form of the word. We're talking about something else, but it's a really good try, Virginie. When we team up, we're talking about collaborating and working with other people. For example, I have a colleague called Axel. If my boss asked me to team up with Axel, it means that he wants us to work together. He could say, Sam, can you team up with Axel, please, when preparing for the YouTube lives? So team up means to work together with someone. And again, I want to try and show and teach you as many phrasal verbs today. So there will be some vocabulary. If at any point you don't understand or you're a little bit confused, please don't feel ashamed to ask in the chat. We're all here to help each other. So if you have a problem or you want me to slow down, please do say so in the chat. So the next one here is back up. What does it mean to back up something? So when we think about the word back, we're often referring to our body part. So this is our back. But we're not, what could back up mean? Does it mean our back is facing upwards? What do you think back up means? So we have team up and we have back up. Okay, so I'll wait for a couple more suggestions and then I can explain the use of this phrasal verb. And these are very difficult, so please don't feel worried that you don't recognize these. It's a very difficult couple of expressions, but we do use them quite a lot in England, so hopefully this will help you. Okay, fantastic. So Chloe has written here, to save something. To save our work. It's very important when we make big projects and we work hard on something. It would be a shame if our laptop would break and we lose all our information and data. Therefore, it's very important that we back up on a hard drive. So this is my hard drive, and I back up my files and photos and music on my hard drive. It's when we save something twice so that we make sure we don't lose it. Okay, I hope that's clear. What does it mean to take over? What does it mean in English to take over? While I'm waiting for some responses, in English, we can also say to overtake. Now, if you can explain to me what take over means and explain the difference between take over and overtake, that would be fantastic. But I'll just give you a couple of seconds to write your answers. Okay, that's a really good point, Virginie. We'll come back to that and we'll have a look at some other answers, but that's fantastic. Okay, so Anya has written here to accept receiving something, I believe. A very interesting point too. Okay, I'll just wait a couple more seconds to see if anyone else wants to try and guess the meaning or the definition. So, to take over is when someone takes charge of something. It's when you have a change in personnel, but it's normally in reference to the highest CEO, the boss, the manager. For example, if I said I am going to take over SNCF, the transport company, it means that I am going to buy the company. I'm going to take over. It means that I will now be in control. I want to take over SNCF. It means I want to be in control. I want to manage that company. So take over is when you physically take the company and it's in your possession. Okay? So again, if that's unclear, please do write it in the chat. And when we talk about overtaking someone, Virginia, you were very close. When you overtake a company, it means to, yeah, I think you are correct actually, to be better, to have a higher statistic in reference to sales, in reference to income. Overtake is when you pass someone. So let's say we have a really big graph, and this graph shows sales of a particular product. We have 2 pens, okay? So this pen sells 100 copies in 1 week, and this pen only sells 50. But then the next week, the white pen sells 150, and this pen sells 100 still. The sales of this pen would overtake this pen here, okay? So this is getting better and higher than this pen, okay? We also use overtake for cars on the road. If you're driving your car and you overtake someone, it means that you go ahead of them. You go out into the road and you overtake them, okay? So I have some sentences here. In these sentences are some phrasal verbs that we've talked about, and in others, there are some phrasal verbs which we haven't discussed. And I'm going to ask you if you think the sentence is correct or incorrect, okay? So let's try with the first sentence. Number 1. I'm sorry if it takes me a long time to write them down. I always swap between my French and English keyboards, and it's very confusing sometimes. Okay, so we talked about teaming up. Is this expression correct or incorrect? We teamed down when he left. What do you think? Is that correct or incorrect to say? We teamed down when he left. So, for example, if I start teaming up with Axel, it means we work together. Do you think this is an expression in English, to team down? Okay, I'll just wait for everyone to write correct or incorrect. I think it's nice for everyone to have an opportunity to guess the answer. I'll just wait a couple more seconds in the interest of time. So you can write correct or incorrect, and there's no punishment for being wrong. Okay, so hopefully we'll get some more responses on the next question. But when we say teamed down, we don't say this. Your team can disband, you can stop teaming up, but we don't use the expression team down. So really good try, but it's very interesting. But we just say team up if you work with someone. We don't say to team down. You could say we stopped working together when he left. That would be the correct way to structure that sentence. But it's very interesting, and these are very difficult, and it's no trouble if you have make mistakes. So the next sentence is, I backed up my notes to my computer. Backed up my notes to my computer. So sentence 2, I backed up my notes to my computer. So remember when we said back up, we were saving something twice on a hard drive. Can we save things to a computer and back things up to a computer? Is that correct? Or is that incorrect? What do you think? Okay, so Annie and Ellen think it's correct. What does everyone else think? Okay, everyone seems to agree, and that's fantastic because this is correct. You're able to back something up to an electronic device, so it would be more than correct to back up your notes to the computer, and it means to save them again on your computer. Let's try a couple more because I think this is a really interesting exercise. Okay. Before we go through this next sentence, I would just like to explain another phrasal verb. So, this phrasal verb is fall through. And perhaps I can ask you all if you understand this phrasal verb. What does it mean if something falls through? What would it mean if I said my contract fell through, or my contract for the house fell through? What would that mean? So fall literally means tomber, to fall. So if I tripped on a rock or something, I would fall over. But fall through is a preposition where we pass from one side of something to the other. Okay, so we have some really interesting points. Ellen has written here to finish, and Chloe's written to fail. And you're really close. I think you are correct, but more specifically, if something falls through, it means that it is no longer happening. It's not worked. So for example, if I want to buy a house and I invest money and I put my deposit down, but then the owners wanting, or the owner's contract falls through, it means that they're no longer interested in selling their house. They do not wish to sell their house anymore. So failing could be a really good description for that. Fantastic. So the next sentence is, I want this project to fall up. Is that correct? So we have fall through if something fails, if something doesn't go to plan. In English, can we say, I want this project to fall up? What do you think? I want this project to fall up. Is that correct? Or do you think that's incorrect? Okay, so Nana thinks it's incorrect. What does everyone else think? So if something falls through, it means that it doesn't work. I'll give you a couple more seconds before I go through the answer. So, very interestingly, it's actually incorrect to say fall up. We don't use this phrasal verb. And the example that I wanted to really show here is that these phrasal verbs can be quite specific in the preposition which they use. So in this example, fall through is correct. So fall is the verb and through is the preposition. It's very specific, the link between the two. So please do pay attention to which prepositions you use with phrasal verbs, because if you try to change them too much, then it's likely they might not have a meaning which you think they do. So just be aware of that. But again, it's really nice that you tried to guess the sentence anyway. So, in the last couple of minutes, as I mentioned, I wanted to try and teach you as many as I could. So I have a couple more here, and what I'm going to do, just like before, I'm going to write them in the chat, but this time I would like you to try and use the preposition in a sentence for me, and then we can discuss the different ideas and we can have a look at the sentence structures which you've all used. So, for example, if I write team up, you could write down, I team up with my friends when we need to do our homework, could be an example. Okay, what does it mean to write down? Can you make me a sentence, please, with write down, this phrasal verb? So while you're writing, I don't want to say too much about the phrasal verb to give it away. So I'll just wait a couple of seconds to see what suggestions we have. And again, please don't feel worried about making mistakes. I think it's really good to make mistakes and then you obviously learn from them. So we have the first sentence. Thank you very much for that, Virginie. Thank you for your sentence. Virginie has written here, I write down this paper. That's a fantastic effort, Virginie. We just need to change one word, but you've used that phrasal verb perfectly in this sentence, so well done. The word which we need to change in that sentence is this. I write down on a piece of paper. To expand the sentence, to give it more meaning and to make more sense, we could say, I write down notes on a piece of paper. I wrote down my notes on this piece of paper. But a really good suggestion. Thank you very much for that, Virginie. Ania, thank you for your sentence. Ania has written, I'm writing your ideas down on a paper. And that's a fantastic sentence there, Ania. There is no error there at all. So when we write down something, we're often referring to making notes. Okay, so again, we're referring to an old lesson of do and make. Make is when you are creating something. And I guess you could say you're creating notes by writing them down. So thank you very much for Virginie and Ania for the sentences, but let's try with one more phrasal verb. Okay. So this might be a phrase you hear in relation to businesses. And I can give you a little bit of a tip. If you look back to before, we talked about take over. This one is a little bit related to that. You'll see what I mean when I give the answer, but can anyone think of a sentence using the phrasal verb to step down? I'll give you a couple of seconds. And again, I would like to repeat, this topic can be very challenging. So I think it's fantastic that all of you are really taking part in the lesson and you're trying to write sentences. It's fantastic. Okay, good try, Chloe. Game over. You're on the right lines. You're getting close, but it's not game over specifically. Okay, let's wait for some more suggestions, but good try, Chloe. Okay, so I can help out. When someone steps down, It means they relieve their duties as a manager or a boss. If someone steps down from their position, it means that they leave their position. Let's say that I am the boss of SNCF. Let's say I take over SNCF. If 1 year later I want to retire, I could step down as the CEO. That means I would leave my position, I would leave the company, I would leave my position as the CEO. I would step down from the position of being a CEO. So I hope that's clear. And that concludes the lesson today. But thank you everyone for joining. It was really nice to see you all contributing, especially in a difficult lesson like this. I would quickly just like to say that on Monday, as it is a holiday, unfortunately, we will not have a video lesson on YouTube, but we will on Tuesday. Thank you all for your time. I hope you have a fantastic weekend and a really nice afternoon and evening. Thank you all again, and I'll see you on Tuesday. Bye.